Good evening, everyone. Yes. Thank you so much. Welcome to the Thomas K. McKeon Center for Creativity. My name is Anita Collier. I'm the Dean of the Center for Creativity and a workshop instructor for the Moth, and we are so happy you're here. Whether you're in the room with us or watching on the live stream, we are so glad you are here to help us celebrate our 5-year anniversary of programming and partnership with the Moth. If you like the Moth, if you like the Center for Creativity, if you like the things we do, there's someone you need to thank, and that is Thomas K. McKeon. He is here tonight, the building's namesake, along with his beautiful wife, Stacy. Tom, would you let us welcome you? Thank you so much. So tonight you are going to be treated to 12 5-minute stories told by your friends and neighbors right here in Tulsa. But before we get to the stories, I want to tell you a little bit about the Moth, because I'm sure most of you in this room are probably diehard Moth fans, but there may be a few who have been drug along who still just think the Moth is an insect and don't really know why you're here. So, the Moth is an international storytelling organization based in New York, and they are dedicated to the art and craft of storytelling in order to celebrate the diversity and commonality of the human experience. They do workshops, they do shows, they do slams all over the world, including an upcoming slam at Cain's Mainstage in November that we will be giving away tickets to. We're a partner for that event, so hopefully you all have your raffle tickets. We'll be giving away those throughout the evening. And the Mainstage show, again, is November 19th at Cain's. So you may be wondering, well, what's the Oklahoma connection? How did the Moth end up partnering with the Center for Creativity as Oklahoma's exclusive community program partner? Let's go back in time. Let's go back in time to the darkest days of the pandemic. Yeah, when we were all on lockdown, we're like fighting over toilet paper. Who watched Tiger King and didn't even know why? I was one of those people. We were Lysoling groceries in our front porch, okay? This is the part of the pandemic I'm talking about. And people are getting laid off. People are feeling insecure in their jobs. And I really wanted to do something that would be big for the college, and I also saw an opportunity to work with organizations that were moving programming online for the very first time during the pandemic. So I made a list of all the organizations I've ever wanted to work for, and I dreamed big, and the Moth was at the top of that list. So I filled out a web form, and a week later found myself pitching an idea for a Native Voices workshop to Juan Rodriguez, senior manager at the Moth. They were very excited about that idea because they had always wanted to work with Native and Indigenous storytellers on a grander scale, but they didn't have the right partner to do that. So we were able to be that partner for them. Over the next 5 years, we worked together to bring 11 different storytelling workshops to Tulsa. Those workshops, thank you. Those workshops help uplift gay voices, Black voices, women's voices, and everyone in Tulsa. They were offered to Tulsa Community College students and employees as well as the wider community. The storytellers you're going to hear tonight all participated in at least one of those workshops. I think I might have forgotten to say this, but we also helped the Moth with their very first ever Deaf Voices workshop. That was another group that they really wanted to work with, but again, we were the right partner for that. And the strength of this partnership has helped to bring more Moth events to Tulsa. You probably remember a couple years ago, they launched their national Pop Up Porch tour right here in Tulsa. We've had slams and main stages, and so we are so proud of this partnership because part of the mission of the Center for Creativity is to help support Tulsa as a vibrant and inclusive city. And our work with the Moth has been instrumental in that. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Juan Rodriguez. He was hoping to be here in person. Unfortunately, that did not work out, but he did send a video. And so we will watch a short 1-minute video with Juan.
Hello, my name is Juan Rodriguez, and I'm the Senior Manager of the Moth Community Engagement Program. I'm so happy to be joining tonight via video to celebrate 5 years of our partnership with the Thomas K. McKeon Center for Creativity, where we've had the privilege of offering true personal storytelling workshops for the Tulsa community. These workshops have been an absolute pleasure to be a part of. Together, we have helped individuals discover and share their authentic stories, creating connections not only between participants and facilitators, but also with the broader community who come together to listen and support one another. Over the years, we have witnessed something incredibly special. Participants who first found their voice in the supportive circles of our workshops, going on to stand before their friends, families, neighbors, and even stepping into our main stages to share their truths with hundreds, maybe even more, of complete strangers. Watching their transformation from tender beginnings to powerful and confident storytelling has been nothing short of inspiring. One of my personal favorite moments was back in 2022, where we had an in-person workshop in September where the cohort brought so much honesty, humor, and heart to the process. And our final share at the Center for Creativity was truly unforgettable, filled with family members, friends, and just love.
I love it. Thank you. That workshop he was talking about here at the Center for Creativity was the Deaf Voices workshop I mentioned. And a couple of the storytellers that he talked about being on Mainstage are going to tell tonight. They told on Mainstage in Tulsa and in Dallas. So we are uplifting Tulsa voices across the United States, and we're really excited about that. So Juan is our primary contact with the Center for Creativity, but he's also my boss. I mentioned that I work directly for the Moth. A couple years ago, I went through their process, which included telling my own stories and learning how to give story feedback, and became an instructor directly for the Moth. I don't teach Center for Creativity Moth workshops, but I do teach around the country, including with organizations who are working with people who are immigrants and refugees or impacted by the for-profit prison industry, and it's been a real joy to work with the Moth across all those capacities. So, thank you. So, a Moth story. What is a Moth story? What is a Moth style? The Moth, so storytelling is an incredibly diverse art form. There's so many ways that people have told stories across cultures and across time and history. The Moth style is a very specific style. First of all, they are true stories. They are personal stories with the storyteller centered in the story, and they are told live and without notes. They also showcase some sort of change or evolution in the storyteller. And that is really what makes a Moth story very special. Without that change or evolution of the storyteller, it's just a fun anecdote you might tell at dinner. So as you hear stories, kind of listen for that tonight. The storytellers, as I mentioned, all participated in one of our 2-week storytelling intensives over the past 5 years. And in those intensives, they learn the Moth style, they develop a story, they workshop it together, and then they share it on a Moth stage. So tonight, you'll hear storytellers who have participated in all 11, or most of those 11 workshops. And it is hard to get up here and tell a true story. We are going to hear some really, really personal and deep things. We're going to hear some funny things. And so we know that you will give each storyteller a lot of love and support when they get up here. Another important thing about a Moth story is that they are on time. They are only 5 minutes long. And so we have the lovely Braylon tonight, who is going to be our timekeeper. When our storyteller hits 5 minutes, Braylon will give a nice little subtle rattle, just a little notice. Hey, time to find your ending. They're still going at 6 minutes. A little more aggressive rattle. If they're still going at 7 minutes, I tackle you and drag you off the stage. So no one wants to see that. So, are you ready for some stories? Yes. So our first storyteller, he participated in that first Native Voices workshop that I mentioned. He is also a faculty member at TCC in Math and Engineering. Oh, I forgot to tell you this fun thing. So in the Moth's tradition, you can look in the program and see their full bios, but we're not going to introduce them that way. We're going to introduce them with a fun fact. And tonight, I asked each storyteller to tell me a little weird thing about them. And so Josh's little weirdsie is that he has been working with a school in Uganda since 2012, which frankly, that just sounds awesome. Not really that weird, Josh, but that's okay. We'll let you slide by. Please give it up for Josh Baker.
tackled at 7 minutes. Prove it. Your children will teach you things, but you have to be listening and, more importantly, willing to learn. My wife, Alicia, and I struggled with infertility for 10 years before we had our twins. Jay is just like my wife. It's like someone took Alicia, put her in a copier, and hit minimize, and then here's Jay, right? You tell them something once, cool. They get all of their to-do lists done. They just, it's just things are in order. Emily was like you put me into a copy machine and hit minimize. And we came out with the runners and the streaks that you get sometimes because we have ADHD. Things aren't always as straightforward and simple with us. You need us to do something, might take a couple of reminders. Is it going to be done in the way that you want? Maybe, likely no. One of the things that arose from this is there was a 7-year stretch where Emily's towel after her bath or shower never got back into the bathroom. And I used to say all sorts of unhelpful things to her, like, hey, it's been a year, 2 years, 3 years, figure it out. None of this worked because why would it? Until one night, when Emily was 8, she came downstairs with her towel, left it, and went upstairs to go to bed. As soon as I saw it, I grabbed it and I yelled, Emily, get down here and get your towel. And I started my way up the stairs. And as she was coming down, we met on the landing. And I said, Emily, come on. You are 8 years old. You are old enough to know how and when to put your towel up. And I saw these tears well up in my child's eyes because they were hurt. I had hurt them. My correction was overcorrection. My things that didn't work weren't helping at all. I saw my wounded child, and I realized that I was the one that did the wounding, and that something had to change. What didn't need to change was the 8-year-old child. What did need to change is the adult and parent in the situation. So I started to try new tactics. Instead of always walking behind and correcting or redirecting, I started teaching on the front end. And I taught Emily quite a few of my coping mechanisms that I use to help me get around and navigate through my ADHD. Like, when you think of something you need to do it right then. Because when I put it off, I forget, and you will too. Or create a routine. Before I go to bed, it's bathroom, brush the teeth, take my meds, go to bed. And I need my meds in order to be a healthy person, so that routine keeps me healthy, well, and safe. But on those stairs, I knew that I had messed up. So I began to teach and to teach and to teach. And things started to change. Emily, not magically, but she got a lot more responsible. In fact, Emily's now a freshman here at TCC, and she's killing it. She's doing amazing. Another thing that changed is our relationship was a lot less adversarial and more supportive and loving and kind and patient. But all of those things that I was affording to her as I was teaching her about my coping mechanisms, I started to realize, oh, I understand myself more now. And I began to actually start to like myself and eventually love myself. And none of those lessons would have been learned by me had it not been for my kid, Emily. And I will never be able to repay her for those lessons that she taught me by forcing me to raise her in a correct way. A few years ago, my wife and I stopped giving a whole lot of gifts for Christmases and birthdays, and we started to give experiences. And so Emily, who's now 18, her and her boyfriend and I, her boyfriend's now 19, we went up to Chicago so that we could go to Soldier Field to see the Weeknd in concert, and it was absolutely amazing. We spent the weekend in Chicago, and an 18 and a 19-year-old hung out with a 50-year-old the entire time and didn't complain about it. It was really kind of cool. When we finished the concert, of course, we're coming down off of our concert high. I mean, it's so cool being in a concert with 80,000 people singing the same lyrics. But as we left and we were on our way back to the Airbnb, Emily looked up at me, because I am still just a little bit taller than her, and she said, "Dad, you might be the coolest person I know." And so I knew in that moment that all of that work that I tried to put in to stop always being a constant correction and to be a father and a teacher, it had paid off. And I now have a great relationship with my child, Emily. Now, does she mess up and I mess up? Absolutely. We're human. That's what happens. But my kids have taught me so much about how to be a better father and a person, not only to them, but also to myself. So kids, you are still everything, everywhere, all at once. Thank you.
Josh, thank you. Woo! Amazing. And Josh's family, including the famous Emily, is here tonight. I don't know if you want to give a wave. Yay! We're so happy you're here. Josh, thank you so much. Our next storyteller. So, his little weirdsie. I'm going to have to read this. He loves to intentionally mispronounce words in front of people who don't know that he knows better. Like instead of saying depot, he might say depot. Instead of saying phlegm, phlegem. Instead of sorbet, sorbet. God, how do you say it? He says, my husband's going to get me for that one because it's a family joke that I pronounce it wrong. Sorbet, right? Please give it up for Anthony C. Brinkley.
So, it was my junior year of high school, one day before my big match against one of the top wrestlers in the state. I was looking forward to it because now I could gauge where I stood against other wrestlers in my weight class, but there was a complication. I had injured my leg 2 weeks before, and though it was okay now, the enforced inactivity had caused me to gain a little more weight than normal. And in wrestling, a little bit of weight goes a long way. See, there are several different weight classifications in which you can be under but not over a certain weight. I had started the year 15 pounds heavier than my 130-pound wrestling weight because everybody pulled weight in wrestling. If you stayed at your normal weight, you'd be going against somebody who was normally 15 or 20 pounds heavier than you and had pulled down to be all hard, lean muscle. Anyway, so with one day and almost 3 pounds to go, I still needed a little help. So I got this brilliant idea of being new to wrestling. I just started my sophomore year. I got this idea that very few people had probably ever thought of. That morning, I ingested the magical chocolate shortcut called X-Lax. I mean, what could it hurt? Of course, I knew there'd be some discomfort, and I did have a few rumbles and quick X's, but by the time I got to my typing class that afternoon, I was feeling pretty good about my decision. Now, typing was my favorite class because I sat next to this sexy, flirtatious Amazon with these big, juicy Betty Boop lips. There was nothing going on between us because Vivian was a 6'2" senior sex goddess, and I was a 5'9", not very popular junior. So, but she loved to flirt and was not at all bad to look at. The problem was, on the other side of Vivian sat this 6'7" basketball player who was totally infatuated with her. But the boy was just goofy, would say lines like, "Oh my goodness, you look sweet potatoes and cornbread good," which sounded pretty good to me, but Vivian would just turn her head and mouth, "Country," when he wasn't looking. Still, she would flirt with him and bat her eyes to get him to do things for her, but not too much, because she didn't want to encourage him. But she openly flirted with my short ass, which, of course, did not sit well with Big Boy. Now, my relationship with Deke, while we weren't friends, wasn't hostile either. I even tried to hook them up, but Vivian would have none of it. Anyway, on this particular day, I'd run out of typing paper, and I asked Vivian if I could get some out of her folder next to her. She said, sure. So I'm going in the folder, and I feel somebody grab the back of my shirt and pull on it as Deke screams, "Get out of my damn paper!" And he tried to fling me down. Well, I kept my balance and turned to face him, and that's when Deke decided to unleash all his frustrations with not getting Vivian and watching her flirt with me, and threw a punch. My wrestling instincts took over. I ducked under, got in on his legs, lifted, but it was like trying to jack a stork. So I had to go a little higher, and the X-Lax remembered what it was supposed to do. And you know those little micro conversations you have with your brain? Was that a short? No, I think that was just an overly gaseous fart. So I decided to go for it and put some oomph to it, lifted it higher, and Niagara Falls. So I slumped down, holding on, and had him duck my head in as he was beating me on the back until two guys came to broke it up. And when I stood up, walking stiffly, I was trying to hold my guts and my emotions in because Deke was giving me that, "Yeah, I beat your little ass" look. So I walked on out the door, down the hallway, out of the school, all the way home. When I got to the house, I peeled off my stinky clothes, sat on the toilet for a long time, trying to make sure everything was empty. Then I cleaned my clothes, cleaned myself, but now I'm getting a little pissed. I'm seething because I knew I had him, and that smirk, I just had to wipe it off his face. So I'm putting on some clothes, and I'm ready to go. I took a few hard swings and did a couple of frog jumps. Nothing? Okay, I'm ready. So I headed back to school, ready for revenge. I knew Deke would be coming out the back with the other athletes, so my plan was to jump him as soon as he came through the door. But time was running out, and as I bound up that last step, I jumped and so dejected, I turned and went on back home. We never did have that rematch because Vivian told him what happened and chastised him for being a bully. He apologized, and not being a guy who really liked to fight, I accepted. I really wanted to tell people what happened, that I wasn't that weak. But, you know, it was high school, and I couldn't add any fuel to the story about getting the beat out of me. And to top it all off, I never did make weight. So my X-Lax sojourn taught me a valuable lesson that changed the way I prepare for the rest of my life. I learned that shortcuts cut short your goals, and silently cutting into your shorts is not golden. So now, way in advance of any event, I make sure I got my shit together. Thank you.
Oh, Tony. Only Tony can tell a story like that and make it sound classy. That was amazing. Our next storyteller. So this is a true little weird Z. I love this. She loves the smell of basements. Give it up for Elena Haskin.
When I was 7, my mom, dad, and sister and I piled into my dad's truck, and we barreled off on a 7-hour road trip to Vermont. Instead of the typical, "Are we there yet? Are you there yet?" kind of questions that kids usually ask, our car ride was filled with hours of custom Jeopardy questions hosted by yours truly. My mom always joked that my sister would fight with her fists and I would fight with my voice, because I always wanted to make sure that I had the final word. Now, we grew up in a small town, and in small towns, word travels pretty quick. It was the kind of small town that you see in movies, where we had no stoplights. We had more cows than people. We even had people who could drive tractors before they could drive cars. And we were just stuck with each other from pre-K all the way up. When I was in high school, there was something that I wanted more than anything, and that was to be class president, for a few reasons. First, you get to give a speech at graduation. Number 2, the ego. And 3, I wanted to have a pulse on everything that was going on, getting to know what was going on, and in a small town, information is your currency. We had a classmate, and his name was Alex. And Alex was born with a rare disease where he was allergic to everything. He was constantly going back and forth to the hospital, and by middle school, he was too sick to even come to school with us, so we had to take classes at home. So I would set up Skype calls with people so we could talk to him during lunch. I would text him, and sometimes I would go over to his house. We would play board games, and I'd just kind of catch him up with what was going on, who was dating who, what the latest sport teams were doing. And after high school, Alex, unfortunately, was put into hospice. I should reach out to him. I kept thinking that I was going to reach out, and that message always just kind of stayed in the draft mode in my head for a few weeks, and those weeks turned to months. So after college, I moved to New York City. And I didn't really stay in touch that well with everybody. We all kind of drifted apart, and we were pretty sick of each other. But I did keep Facebook, so I could keep the illusion of being really connected with everyone. But really, I was just lurking to see who was married to who and who was having a baby. And all of a sudden, one day when I was scrolling, waiting for some of my friends to come to lunch, I saw 3 words. And it said, "Rest easy, Alex." And it didn't take long for me to put on my president hat and become the self-appointed death ambassador. I have to tell everybody. I have to tell people in our class what happened. They need to know what happened with Alex. So I put together a quick Facebook post, and I grabbed all these photos, and I started sending it to everybody, reaching out to everyone. This is what happened. This is what happened. A few minutes later, my phone rang, and it was Sarah. And she said, "Elena, Alex didn't die." For the first time in my life, I had no words. I quickly jumped into PR mode, trying to delete it as quickly, searching the web for obituaries. It must be true. Come on, it must be. But Sarah had reached out to his brother to send her condolences and found out the truth that he indeed wasn't dead yet. Now, word travels really quickly in a small town, and at that point, there wasn't really much left that I could do. But there was one thing that was still left. I pulled up that draft that I'd been meaning to send for all those weeks and months, and I finally started writing. Not to anyone else, just to Alex. Now, my mom always said that I fought with my words, and sometimes the biggest fight is keeping your mouth shut. But when you do actually have something to say, make sure it actually matters. Thank you.
When's the last time you tried something daring? 5 strangers will take the stage to tell powerful, true stories, bold choices, audacious proclamations, courageous humility. Each night, completely unique. Get tickets at themoth.org/daring. Come on, we dare you.
All right. Sorry, that went so fast. Elena, that was just one gut punch after another. Thank you for that story. So, this is the Mainstage event. We were talking about what we have is 2 sets of tickets. We're going to give away 1 set right now. So, if you entered the raffle for the Mainstage event on November 19th, get out your tickets. 246221. 246221. Anybody? All right, yes, wonderful. Sir, you can head back to that registration table, and they will take your information, and we'll get you those tickets. So we have another set of 2 that we'll be giving out later, so don't worry, you'll have another chance. So our next storyteller, her fun little fact is that she only likes ice cream when it's below 60 degrees. Give it up for Sandra Slade.
You've heard the saying, growing old gracefully, aging like fine wine. Forget that. I'm going to fight it every step of the way. You know, they say you get older, and I'm going slower, and I realize things, but we all know gravity is undefeated, okay? Unless you're going under the knife, and I'm not doing that. But I realize I'm walking slower, it takes me a little bit longer to do things, and I'm forgetful, but I'm still gonna maintain who I am. Well, one day I was at a comedy show, and I was having a good time. We were in the speakeasy. It smelled like bourbon and whiskey and salted peanuts in a wood area. It was wonderful. Everybody's having a good time, laughing, except for me. I was sweating, and I was hot. And I hurried up and introduced the next comedian, and I got off the stage, and I told my friend Heather, I was like, it is burning up in here. And she was like, no, that's just you. And I was like, no, it's hot. And she looked at me and she was like, no, it might be time for, perimenopause. And I was like, no. And she's like, yeah, perimenopause. And she kept saying it like it was a gift. I'm like, that's not a gift I want. And I refused to believe it, and I just took that away. I noticed one day I was bringing my dogs in, and I couldn't remember their names. I looked at them, they looked at me. I couldn't remember their names, and I'm just like, dog, go in your cage. My daughter was looking at me, I was looking at my dogs, and I just stood there like, I don't know what to do. And I went outside, and I sat on the porch, and I started watching the squirrels that I usually watch. I call them Gertrude and Evan. And Gertrude and Evan were having a fight or something, and I was making up in my head, and then all of a sudden, I started crying. I just sat there crying for like 5 or 10 minutes, and I couldn't help it. My daughter also noted that. And I walked back inside, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna just lay down. It was getting late. I laid down, was taking a nap, and I got up and I told my daughter, I said, hey, quit turning up the heat. She's like, Mom, I don't even get out of the bed. I'm starting to realize something's wrong. I'm forgetting things, I'm losing it. And I noticed my daughter was talking to my son a little bit more about me, so they were like 2 seconds off of calling the people to come get me. And I'm still like, no, nothing's wrong. A couple of more days go by, and then I thought, let me call and set an appointment. Well, before the appointment comes, I am going to dinner with my sisters. I'm at dinner with my sisters, and we're laughing and talking, and I pick up the menu, and I just start fanning myself. And my sister's laughing. She's like, are you hot? You burning up? You sweating? And I said, yeah, it's hot in here. And they're like, oh, and laughing and giggling. I don't think it's funny. My middle sister says, girl, you just going through a private summer. And that's when it clicked. I remember sitting in church with my mom and my aunt. And my aunt is sitting there with us, and she's taking off her jacket. She's unbuttoning her blouse. And I'm like, hey, lady, we are in church. Watch it. She's sweating like a sinner in there. And I'm like, what's going on? And I turned to my mom, and I'm like, what is wrong with her? And my mom's like, nothing's wrong with her. She's just having her own private summer. And as a kid, I was thinking, you can have your own summer? I want one of those. But now as an adult, I realize I don't want a private summer. I don't want anything like it. But I thought about all the things that was going on with me, and I realized we weren't talking about it. Women weren't talking about menopause and perimenopause, and I thought that makes it shameful. That makes you feel like you're by yourself. And I vowed not to do that. I talked to the lady that does my hair, the lady that helps me with clothes, my nailtician, my loctician, and every woman, we talk about the symptoms, what we go through, what we're dealing with, so that we don't feel like we're by ourselves. A lot of times they ask me, like, well, what do you take, and what do you take, and have you taken this pill, have you tried this? And going to the doctor, they always tell you, it's just the right cocktail. I'm like, at this point, I'll take it all, tequila, bourbon, whiskey, all of it, to get rid of these flashes. This is ridiculous. It's not only the flashes that bother me. Sometimes I walk around with a notepad. I write down what I need to do before I leave the room so I don't forget. It helps, but my daughter's like, she's tired of finding sticky notes everywhere in the house. But it's helping me. But I always think, if I had known then what I knew now, I'd be in a lot better space. I'd still be out there looking at Gertrude and all the other squirrels and not remembering who they are, but it is what it is. But I'm not as mad as I am I used to be, but I'm a lot happier now. But one thing I think about is, every time I have a heat flash, I pause and think, Eve, you did all this for a damn apple? Thank you.
Sandra, making perimenopause look beautiful. I love it. If she looks familiar to you, it's probably because you saw her on the Tulsa Mainstage last year, or one of the many other comedian. She's a comedian. She's a stand-up. She's hilarious. We're so glad you're here. Our next storyteller also is a former Moth Mainstage speaker. He did a really, really funny story in Dallas. And tonight we're going to hear a different story from him. His little weirdsie, I think a lot of us can relate to. He likes to eat cereal late at night. Put your hands together for Carl Jones.
Are you a boy or a girl? It was a hot, sweaty, gross day in elementary school, sort of early at the beginning of the year, and the question had come from a bully and someone that I knew that I didn't want to mess with, and so I tried to ignore the question, and as we all know, bullies don't like to be ignored, and so the follow-up was, "Oh, so you're a girl, aren't you?" And I was so frustrated because I knew that I was supposed to respond and say, "No, I'm not a girl, girls are gross." But I just had a conversation the week prior with my mother about the release of the pilot of She-Ra, Princess of Power, and I had complained that it didn't make sense that she was getting power from He-Man's castle Grayskull instead of her own castle, the Crystal Palace that was in the sky. To me, sexism was always just illogical. It doesn't make any sense. I was always surrounded by strong, powerful, kind, loving people of all genders and sexualities. And so I knew that this person was trying to get under my skin, and it was really frustrating. And it was the beginning of years and years of controlling of my behavior, because I'd probably skipped to the water fountain, and that person had noticed that, and skipping was not appropriate for a boy. And so that was the beginning, as I mentioned, of a lot of things, ways in which my desires, my interests were controlled, and I started to control myself, controlling my behavior, changing the way I acted around people, pretending not to be interested in certain things, and having certain interests. But I was lucky I survived all of that and eventually got to come out to myself and come out to my family as a gay man, and I eventually got to move to a big city. And one of the things that's interesting about moving to a big city is that you meet a lot more people who have had some similar experiences and kind of end up there together. I think this is really true for a lot of people in the queer community. And so I was able to start to be myself in more and more interesting ways and express my interests, express my desires, talk about the things that I like to talk about. And I found out that instead of people wanting to control me, they were actually interested in a lot of those things. They wanted to know what kind of music I listened to, or what books I had read. And I realized that I was in this wonderful space of privilege where I was being able to live in a very authentic and wonderful way. And as we all know, with privilege comes power. And there's a dark side to that, in that I had never really been desired before. I'd never been in a place where people wanted to know about me and wanted to spend time with me. And I also had not really had a chance to date before. And so it was in Washington where I learned the flip side of having people be really interested in you. I started to date people. And so if you know people in cities, if you know a lot of people in the gay community, there's a lot of different types, right? There's like the muscle gays, and there's twinks, and there's otters, and there's bears. And I was an indie gay because I liked indie rock and Britpop and Belle and Sebastian. And so even in this small indie gay community, there were a lot of different people to date. So I started dating people, and I didn't really know how to say no. And I also had read Gender Trouble, if you guys are familiar with that, but Ethical Slut hadn't really been written yet. There just wasn't a lot of way to talk about being open or polyamory. Like if you're just dating one person, you dated them. And so it was in DC where I started to date people, and I started to date a lot of people. And I didn't really think about the consequences of that until a big Christmas party that a lot of my friends decided to go to. And when I told my friends that I was going to this party, a lot of the people that I was dating started to let me know that they too were going to be attending this party. And I found out that in total, 7 of the people that I was dating at the time were all going to be coming to this party. And it was at a cute little 2-story bar in Adams Morgan, and I showed up early, and I kind of did my best, and I was starting to realize it was going to be a problem, so I did my best to encourage the people that I was dating to come at different times so that I could sort of interact with them. And the first person, Danny, who's this brilliant Scottish computer programmer, he showed up on the early side, and he brought a Christmas present for me, and I was like, oh, wow, that's so wonderful and sweet, and I opened the Christmas present as Michael arrived in the door, and I took the Christmas present and shoved it under the couch and told Danny I would be back. I was going to go upstairs real quick, where I walked with Michael to the second floor, who also had a Christmas present for me, which I opened. It was a book that I hadn't read yet. It was really exciting. And then as we were talking, I realized Noah was arriving downstairs because you could sort of see over the balcony. And so I shoved the book under another couch, and I told Michael that I'd be back, and went down and greeted Noah at the door, and we started talking, and he handed me my Christmas present, which was a bottle of wine that I ended up just giving to the bartender. And so throughout the night, I accepted 7 different Christmas presents from 7 different men that I was dating. And I think what I sort of started to realize is that you know, I may still not know the answer to are you a boy or a girl, but I do know that I am an indie gay who is currently in a monogamous relationship with a man here in Tulsa. Thank you.
Oh, Carl, breaking hearts, juggling boys, and now you're just a fine, upstanding young man. So we are now going to give away one of the spots for our spring storytelling intensive. So if you win this raffle, we will get in touch with you this spring when we've set dates for that workshop, and we will look forward to having you, and maybe one day you'll be up on stage too. So the number I drew is 246240. 246240. Going once. Going twice. Oh, in the back. All right. Again, if you want to go over, give your information at our registration desk. And don't worry, if you are on our email list, which you all are now, we open up these workshops when the spaces are available. So if you don't win one tonight, you still have another chance. Our next story is a really big story. It is going to be really difficult for our storyteller to tell, and it's going to be hard to hear too. She is being exceptionally brave and exceptionally vulnerable. When her story is over, we're going to take a short break just to allow us all to regroup. And so when she comes to the stage, I know we're going to give her extra love and support. Her little weirdsie. Let me just read it and exactly what she said. I used to absolutely hate reading and giving book reports in grade school. And now here I am writing my own book, a memoir, and standing on stage publicly sharing the most intimate parts of my life for all to hear. Give it up for Stephanie Janae.
Okay, so there's this glass room at St. Louis Children's Hospital that no one really wants to be called into. It's the room where you get delivered some bad news. My husband and I were chosen to enter that room. In that moment, we were being told that our 7-year-old daughter, Michaela, would be needing a heart transplant. She had been declining so rapidly, she needed a Hail Mary to get her there because they didn't think she'd be able to make it. What they proposed was something called an LVAD. It stands for a left ventricular assist device. They then explained the procedure. They would cut her from right above her clavicle down to about an inch above her belly button, and they would split her ribs and end up coring out a piece of her heart. They explained that they would then insert this machine into her heart that would then now pump her blood for her, and her heart would beat no more. They explained this was the best option to get her there. My husband and I signed off on the paperwork, and then we awaited for surgery. When the day of surgery arrived, my daughter was one that always had to be aware. She had to be knowledgeable. She had to know what was happening. She was the kid, the person that would watch the needle go in with every lab draw. She had to know. So she knew what was coming, and she was scared. It was time to go back. The doctors and nurses had came into the room. It was that moment, and she's holding on to my arm. She's refusing to let go. My husband, at the time, he leans in, and with a stern voice, he's like, "Michaela, you have to let go of your mom. We have to do this. You need this." And she squeezes my arm tighter, and she grunts. She's not letting go. I look at the doctor. Tears start streaming down my face. I can't let you take her screaming and crying. What do I do? He lets me know I'm going back with them. So we start rolling down the hallway. We're going down. I notice up on the ceiling, there's superheroes and princesses painted. So I pointed out to Michaela. I'm like, "Look." She squeezes me tighter. I look down at her, and I see her eyes trying to look up with that childhood innocence, that wonder she still has, but she's holding tight. The stretcher burst open the operating room doors, and Grey's Anatomy just flashes across my face. I'm watching, I'm looking around. I know there has to be a looking gallery because it's a teaching hospital, and my daughter is a 1 in a million case. I knew soon her chest would be open, and there would be a gallery full of strangers looking in and watching in awe. So I'm standing there. She's holding my arm. I'm rubbing her. The doctors and nurses are filling in around us, bringing in all the machinery, and I'm talking to her. I'm telling her she's going to be okay. She's brave. She's strong. She's got this. I'm talking to her. I'm wiping her tears. I'm kissing her forehead. I feel a tap on my arm. She's asleep. I look at her. Her eyes are open. Tears are still dropping. I call out her name. "Michaela." She's asleep, she tells me again. "I'll show you out." I take a deep breath. She walks me to the door. She points in the direction of the waiting room and said they would message me when it was time. The door closes, and I collapse to the ground, shaking, crying, screaming silently, because we are in the operating room area, so can't really scream the way I wanted to. I feel a tap on my shoulder again. It's another stranger, a nurse, someone with a bottle of water and some Kleenex. They said they would show me the way. They lead me out to the waiting room. It's a big waiting room. There's private rooms, there's public areas. Because of the level of Michaela's surgery, we get a private room. There were a lot of us. But in that moment, I couldn't go in the room. I was still a mess, and I couldn't let my other two kids see me. Michaela was 7. Her brothers were 8 and 10. I couldn't let them see me the way I was. So I sat there, deep in my thoughts, remembering the day Michaela was born. She was diagnosed with her first heart disease when I was still pregnant with her, so we knew she was going to have a journey ahead of her. I didn't think I was going to be brave enough to get her there, but I walked her there. I walked her right into that room, and I held it together for her. Even though my legs gave out, once I exited that room, I still got her there. And in that moment, Michaela came to. She knew the rules. You open your eyes, you give mommy a smile, and you let me know you're okay. And she did. And in that moment, in times where I thought I wasn't brave enough to do it, I knew I was brave. because I had to be in order to create a warrior like Michaela. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, again. That was an incredible story. Thank you for sharing about Michaela with all of us. It's intermission, have some snacks. We'll start up again in about 10 minutes. Thanks. All right, welcome back. We have 6 more phenomenal stories to hear and more giveaways. Now, I need you all to do me a favor. If you have a bag of chips or anything crinkly, would you please put those away? We don't want someone to be at a beautiful moment in their story and you hear as you dig into your bag of chips. So I'll just give you a moment to please do that. So our next storyteller, she participated in our Deaf Voices workshop. This was one that we held here in person at the Center for Creativity. It was the first time the Moth was able to work with deaf storytellers. TCC has a very strong commitment to American Sign Language, so we could be that partner for them. Our next storyteller, so she is hearing. She's a TCC retiree, and she headed up the Resource Center for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing here at TCC for a long time. Her little weirdsie, this is I like this one. She looks so nice, but she's a freak, man. I love Kay. Not only did we work together, but she's one of our I Can't Workshop regulars. Like, if she can't come, she will let us know because we worry about her, so she can take a little bit of ribbing. So she has a ceramic Roadrunner that sits in the middle of her dining room table, and a suitcase full of costumes and accessories she uses to dress it up during the holidays. I love it. Please give it up for Kay Ellis.
We used to have posters. Now you call them memes. We had posters with inspirational sayings, witty things, posters in our bedrooms of our favorite band. When I was young, that would have been the Jackson 5, the Osmond Brothers, and the Monkees. Posters everywhere. Posters on the ceiling at the dentist office, as if looking at a scene of snow-capped mountains was going to make that root canal better. There was one particular poster, and you may have seen it, it shows up on social media nowadays, of the kitten that's hanging onto a branch with the caption, "Hang in there." Well, as my life was being turned upside down, that poster was what was keeping me going. That hanging on to that branch, hang in there. You see, I was being confronted with having a divorce. Well, divorce was not something that I'd ever thought of. It was not something that I wanted. And so I was struggling with what I was going to do. But I was going to hang in there. I'm Catholic, and, divorce isn't looked upon likely, as something that you just do without thought. I also grew up thinking that once you made a decision, you were supposed to stick to it. So I'm still struggling with this hanging in there. So as I'm taking walks, trying to figure out what I'm going to do, feeling like I knew what I should do, and negotiating with God. Tell me what I'm supposed to do. But mostly, I thought I knew what I was supposed to do. And by golly, I was going to hang in there. My mother gave another little saying to me one time, and it was, let go and let God. But how was I going to let go of that branch? That branch held all my fears of being judged, my fears of the unknown, my fears of being rejected. All of those fears were in that branch. So how was I going to let go of that? One night, I remember sitting on the floor beside my bed, and I had just worn myself out. I was tired. I didn't know what else I could do. My prayer that night was simply, "Thy will be done." There was no negotiating. There was no me thinking that I knew. I was going to let go. I woke up the next morning, and I was at peace. There was a divorce, and no longer being a married woman with 2 children, I had to embrace being a single parent. Everything was okay. If I had known that when I let go of that branch and let go of those fears, the ground was actually right there. If I had seen it now, I would be able to scroll and see that the ground was right there. It was not a long fall. It was just a step I needed to take. I let go of being fearful. That's not to say I don't get nervous. I certainly get nervous about things, starting a new job. I went back to college to get my degree in deaf education, which was following a passion of mine. My children and I did more than survive. We actually thrived. Years later, when I'm working, another poster came into my life. A coworker was putting it on her office door. I walk up to it, and it has the caption, "Never give up." Well, my experience with the little kitten poster, "To let go," as I walked up to it, I thought, sometimes it's not giving up, sometimes it's moving on. And as I get closer, she's unrolling the poster. It's one you may have also seen on social media. It's a stork trying to eat a frog. He has the frog in his mouth, but the frog has his hands wrapped around the stork's skinny neck, holding on so he can't be swallowed. But when I first saw the poster, my thought was, that stork can swallow that frog. It may be because my daughter's pet snake had swallowed rats that were definitely too big for it. So I knew it could happen. When my coworker said, "Yep, if that frog does not let go, he won't be swallowed. Never give up." Oh, I got really quiet, nodded my head, walked quietly back to my office, and I was thinking. I was comforted that I did not identify with that fearful frog. I was not the victim. I do still kind of wonder if I may have identified with the predator. Thank you.
Kay, you are fierce. I love it. Don't mess with Kay. Our next storyteller. Okay, next time you do this, call me because I'm coming over, all right? Her little weirdsie is, she says, "I've watched the Crystal Light National Aerobics Championships enough to have a favorite year, 1987. Give it up for Laurel Ryan.
There's a story in the Bible of Jesus healing a woman who's been dealing with an issue of blood for a dozen years. And I remember being about 12, sitting in the congregation, hearing the pastor say about her ailment, and we don't really know what that could mean. Moving on, something, faith, blah, blah, blah. My youthful mind got stuck on what an issue of blood that lasts that long could mean. Now, at that age, sure, I was still playing with dolls, but also I had learned how to sneak sanitary pads into my sleeves so that no one would know why I was going to the bathroom. So, and obviously, periods are gross, so we don't put them in the Bible. Did it come out of her butt? Regardless, as I grew, as I aged, when I would get a little dizzy sometimes standing up, I attributed that to poor diet, not my reproductive system. Last summer, I was having a conversation with a friend I grew up in church with, and you know, the adult conversations of, how are your aches and pains today? And I screwed up my courage. I thought, I'm gonna say it out loud. I think I might have fibroids. Now, about 70% of women will develop fibroids by the age of 50. Most can be controlled with hormonal birth control. I only know this because a family member dealt with the uncontrollable kind of fibroids that led to seemingly endless periods, needing a blood transfusion, multiple surgeries. But as I told my friend, obviously mine's not that bad. It's just that I can like feel a lump in my abdomen. My periods are regular. I mean, I do have to double up on the embarrassing side of pad plus like the heavy duty tampon. Sorry, you don't need to know any of that. That's so gross. Sorry. And as I was apologizing, she looked at me in horror and said, "Laurel, go to the doctor." All right, I did eventually. And I went back because you have to rule out a lot of other really scary things for somebody to tell you what's inside that shouldn't be. So there were blood tests, there were scans, there were pelvic exams, there were transvaginal ultrasounds. The comfort I eventually found of just sitting Donald Ducking it in a physician's office while somebody has an implement inside me, wiggling it around, going, "Sorry, breathe. Your ovaries are hiding." But at least it's you know what? I knew it. It is a fibroid. Okay, so what's it gonna be? A prescription, or do I need to find Jesus and touch his hem? Am I right, Doc? And now is when multiple medical professionals start describing the fibroids. Huge, bigger than a baby's head, has a horn, and the only way to vanquish the life-sucking, nutrient-hungry demon inside me is a hysterectomy. And the best way to prepare for that is a months-long protocol of medically induced menopause. Fantastic. First, pull your pants down. Here's a shot. Get out there, kid. And so I had time to prepare my head, my heart, and Google a bunch of stuff. All of my questions. Am I gonna need pelvic floor therapy after this? Why do I have so many hot flashes? Is a night sweat and a hot flash the same thing? Yes. Is this menopause rage, or do I just need to eat something? Am I gonna need hormone replacement therapy? How long should I take off work? And I am full of anxieties and new information and frustration with the medical system and the amount of things we don't know about women's bodies and what I know about my own experience, and I find myself unable to answer the basic question of, "Hey, how are you?" I'm about to tell you. Whew. And I became honest. Turns out a lot of other women have experienced similar issues. But I found a particular evil glee in telling my straight male friends. Now, listen, I don't have one, but I know what a prostate is. I know where to find it. I know if it's enlarged, it's bad. I know what it's for. I know what that turn your head and cough means. We're looking for hemorrhoid. Why do I know that? Just general societal knowledge. And yet, I'll bet you don't know the size that a uterus is supposed to be. So how am I? How have I been? Okay, all right. Let me find the awkward ones, the formerly homeschooled types, recognizes who love to scuttle out of a conversation as soon as it turns to women's issues. How have I been? Okay, come here. So what they're gonna do to me is they're gonna flip me upside down so that the organ soup can just slide out of the way, and then they're gonna stab into me a few times and chop things up. Think of it like a sausage maker. They're gonna take the fibroids, the uterus, the cervix, and hey, stay here, buddy, stay. Then they're going to pull it out my vagina. How have you been? Thank you.
Oh my God, Laurel, only you can make such a horrible experience so hilarious. I never thought I'd laugh at the phrase uterine horns. I mean, that's incredible. Our next storyteller says, "I can write fluently backwards with my right hand thanks to my childhood obsession with left-handed twins." Give it up for someone with a very specific obsession, Piwa Longini. Thank you.
I pulled up to the building marked USCIS, United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. I made my way through security and repopulated my pockets and, as instructed, followed the officer right, left, and into the waiting room where he deposited me. I sat there just feeling my nerves start to bubble up, which is wild because my family has been doing this sort of thing since I've been 9 months old. This is not new to me, it's true to me. And so I sat there and a few more people came in and a couple folk got called away until a woman walks to the door and says, Langeni? So I stood up, followed her into her office where there was a bit of plexiglass between the desk and a couple chairs. And I reached over to get one of those chairs and she said, don't sit yet. And so, hand in the air, do you promise to tell the truth and nothing but the truth? I do. Now you can sit down. So I sat. She starts tapping away at her keyboard, and I started trying to look around the room without looking too suspicious because I don't know what that looks like, so I'm keeping it kind of still, and my eyes settle on this stack of paper on her desk. And trying to cut through my rising nerves and this weird energy that she's giving me, I say out loud, wow, that's a tall stack of papers. And without even looking up, she says, that's your file. My file? Whoa. My file, this ream and a half stack of papers, barely held together by this tattered and dutiful folder that's been containing this stack of papers for over 4 decades. And she continued tapping away the metronome of my swirling thoughts about all these signatures and the fingerprints and the background checks and the copies of visa pages and passports every 5 years and the evidence of the multi-thousands of dollars we've had to pay with each application fee, sitting in that stack of papers on her desk. She interrupted my thoughts with the first question of the civics test. I heard the question, I knew the answer, but I couldn't draw it out of my lips because of that stack of papers sitting loudly between the two of us. My silence lingered a little bit longer, enough for her to look up from her computer just as I blurted out the correct answer. Question 2, better. 3, 4, 6, answer, answer, answer. Scoot up to the tablet, but don't touch it. I scooted, I didn't touch. Read the sentence. I read. Write this sentence. I wrote. I sat back in my chair as she went back to tapping away at her keyboard, and I went back to staring at that stack of papers. All the prayers submitted with each application, all the hopes dashed with each rejection, all the details of my life, but with none of the stories. My mind continued to swirl as she broke back in with her voice, telling me, answer these yes or no questions. Have you ever? No. Have you ever? No. Do you promise? Yes. She looked up again, this time with a smile on her face. Congratulations. You have been approved for naturalization. I tried to mirror her face, but the smile on mine was obligatory. And so I finished up with the niceties of stark difference than the coldness I felt when I first walked in, and she even sent me away with a Rice Krispie treat. And I left that building lighter than when I'd first come in, but surprisingly burdened by that stack of papers in that tattered folder. I got to my car and I started crying. And I kept crying all the way home because that stack of papers was a visual of all the decisions others made about my life, my family, systems, policies, countless strangers, all of them deciding where I could live, how long I could stay there, what I can do, who I could be. My feelings were this jumble of relief, but also of the ache of all that it took to get here. Half a year later, my first ever ballot arrives in the mail. One sheet of paper, one question, one mark to cast my vote. And it occurred to me in that moment as my mind transported me back to that stack of papers. My entire life has been shaped by other people's decisions, but now, right now, it was time for me to make the decision. And while I still have not filled out my ballot, my tears have already marked that page. Thank you.
Piwa, amazing story. We are so glad you are here. And it is very meaningful to hear a story about a naturalization ceremony at the end of the month in October. October started at the Center for Creativity with a naturalization ceremony where we worked with the U.S. District Court of Northeastern Oklahoma and right in this room welcomed 45 new citizens. So you brought it back around. Thank you. So before we introduce our next storyteller, we are going to give away another spot in our spring intensive. This is the 2-week storytelling workshop. So pull out your tickets. And we have 246-223. 246-223. Yay, all right, wonderful. So we'll just go over to Ethan right over there at the check-in desk and he'll get your information. So our next storyteller, he won the Moth Slam when they were here in 2021. He is also a professor of English here at Tulsa Community College. And his little weirdsie, which will be illustrated in his story, is I hate squirrels. Give it up for Sloan Davis.
I reached a milestone this year, and that is I made full professor here at TCC. To celebrate this achievement, I bought myself a brand new Martin guitar. Not only that, I bought it on a day when I had the house to myself. No girlfriend, no college-age sons of mine coming home unexpectedly, just me and my guitar. Bought a 6-pack of beer. It's a Friday, around 4. Crack open the beer, got the guitar there, got snacks here. I put on a documentary about the Beatles. I'm gonna do this for hours. And I look out the window of the French doors, and there's that squirrel. And it's on my basil plant, and it's like chewing on the leaves and then spitting it out and then grabbing another one and spitting it out. And I'm like, you son of a, and I go flying through the French doors and I get out of here like an old man. I'm yelling at the squirrel as it's running away. And I turn to go back into my house and the French door had locked. And I look through the glass and there's my brand new guitar that I haven't even played yet. The sweating can of beer, looking very, very gorgeous. My wallet, my keys, my phone plugged in and charging. I look down, I see my bare feet. I look back in, there are my sandals. I have entered the middle of the 20th century. My house is locked up, sealed tight. I walk around looking. Stepping on acorns, and if you've ever stepped on an acorn barefoot, you know what that feels like. I don't know what to do. I stand in my driveway and I look out at my cul-de-sac. Again, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. All my neighbors are either at work or they're picking up kids from school, except for maybe my neighbor to the left, Patrick. He's in his 80s, tends to be a bit of a hermit. Surely he'll be home. And so I knock on the door, and yes, he's there. I tell him my situation. He lets me in, and he's like, I'll let you make a phone call, but try not to make a long-distance phone call. And he hands me a landline. And I look at this archaic technology in my hand, And it dawns on me that I don't know anyone's phone number. I don't know who I can call at this point, except my mother, because I know her phone number. She lives in Kalispell, Montana, near the Canadian border. I could call my mom. She could call my son, she doesn't text, who can then come and let me into my house. But I don't want to call my mom because she's 81 and I love my mother to death, but she's alone with her cat, and this might turn into a 20-minute conversation before I can get the ball rolling. And look, I started this whole day, all I wanted was some alone time, right? Just me, the guitar, alone time. And so I turn to my Patrick and I say, hey, I don't know anyone's phone number. So then he starts just talking, chit-chatting, and I look up the stairs next to the front door, and there are these bags of figs. And then there's this giant carton of crackers. And then there's cereal. And he's like, yeah, I use the stairs for my pantry. I'm like, okay, cool. And I like figs. And I'm like, yeah, I see you like figs. And then he starts to tell me how he has this shopping group that goes out about twice a month, and they decide whether it's Costco or Walmart, Super Walmart, Sam's, and they go shopping. And it's not a very intriguing story, but I listen. And in the back of my mind, I'm going, how the heck do I get back into my house? Patrick's always been a long-winded storyteller. I used to meet him at the mailbox, and he would tell me these long stories, and he would, the type of person that would say, long story short, after it's too late. And it would be like 105, 110 degrees in the middle of the summer, and I'd be sweating, and I'd slowly walk into the shade of my oak tree, just so I didn't, die in that heat. And this is kind of happening again in his house that smells like an old book. He's a hoarder of books. And then it dawns on him, hey, I have your ex-wife's phone number in my cell phone. I say, okay, great. I give it a call. She doesn't answer because she doesn't recognize the phone number, but I leave a voicemail, and she calls me back. Okay, I'll let our son know. He'll come over and help you out. Thank you. But it's going to take about 20 minutes, half an hour. So I know this. So now I get comfortable, and Patrick and I start talking, and I realize he hasn't talked to anybody in a while, and that he lives alone, and he really is wanting to chit-chat and just let some things out. And so we talk about Oklahoma history and the things that are happening in our world right now, and we're going back and forth, and it turns out to be quite a stimulating conversation. And as I'm leaving, my son rolls up, and I'm leaving, he grabs my arm and he says, Sloan, I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm so glad we had a chance to catch up. And I was like, me too, Patrick. Me too. And I meant it. And I realized as I'm walking over to my son that for some of us, alone time is needed. We got to have it. But too much alone time is isolation. And isolation can be very lonely. And so for me, I'm going to be knocking on his door and saying hi a little bit more often. Thank you.
All right, yes, Sloan, go over there, talk to Patrick, eat all those figs. I love it. Our next storyteller. So, you're a freak, Corey. I love you. Corey says, I had a full-body MRI scan after an accident and discovered I have extra bones in my hands, feet, knees, and extra enamel in my teeth. If you like your men extra bony, you're going to love Corey Davis.
When I was in the 7th grade, I was cast in a production of Women and Children First at the University of Oklahoma, which is the 3rd section of Torch Song Trilogy. It was an evening of plays about immediately before and immediately after the AIDS crisis. I am the product of a very enthusiastic stage mom, and me and my 2 sisters were always being driven to auditions, and we would sing for anything, the opening of a grocery store or a county fair or whatever. Actually, I ended up winning a pageant division that I wasn't even in. I was there with my sisters, and they had this division that was for all of the brothers who had been dragged along, and I won. So there was a picture in our living room of me in this black tux that is absolutely covered in glitter spray, and a sash that says American Beauty, and a paper mache crown that's the Margarine King commercial crown. It's like the exact same thing. So this is who I was as a kid. Now I'm in 7th grade, I'm approaching adolescence, and I'm starting to realize that I have been telling on myself this whole time and starting to feel very awkward and very embarrassed and very ashamed. And I didn't really want to be in front of people at this point. I kind of wanted to just hide. But you can't really hide, I discovered, when every time you open your mouth, a purse falls out. No closet for me. So this is where I am as I start rehearsals for this production, and immediately, it was weird. It's in this tiny black box theater that I didn't even know existed on the OU campus, and my mom had to be my chaperone, which I wasn't thrilled about, and also there was this safe sex seminar component to rehearsals that I was not allowed to be in because I was in 7th grade. So everyone except for me and my mother at the appointed time would just stand up and leave and go to another space, have whatever was going on. And this happened a couple times. They come back in, they have these handouts that are one-liners that apparently must have been hysterical because they are all laughing like crazy about this. And it's one-liners to say in the moment that you insist only on having protected sex. And I really wanted one, but I wasn't allowed to have one. So I started having an argument with my mother, and I'm giving her an Oscar-worthy performance of like, we're doing a project that is about AIDS. I know what AIDS is, we're here. And remind her that she's a social worker. She runs the homeless shelter, a homeless shelter in Norman. She, as part of this, she was making food for an organization that delivered food to people who were homebound in the OKC metro area living with AIDS. And she had replaced all of the wooden utensils, the cutting board, the rolling pins in our kitchen with marble ones so that it didn't introduce any pathogens to people who were immunocompromised. And I didn't say this next bit, but I knew I was gay. And through the lens of conservative late 80s, early 90s Oklahoma, I had come to sort of understand that gay equals death sentence. And I was reminded of this death sentence every time I walked into the kitchen. So it's awkward and silent. Actually, I forgot. As I'm finishing my Oscar-worthy performance, the director of the play very discreetly folds up his flyer and puts it in my back pocket. And I never broke eye contact with my mom. I'm sure she had no idea. But then there's this awkward silence, and the stage manager puts on D-Light, Groove is in the Heart. Everyone starts dancing. It's like random dance party. The director pulls me in the middle of it, and like, at this point, I had never seen guys queen out on a dance floor before, and these boys were queening out for the gods. They were so funny and so good and so relaxed and so just themselves. And they're pulling me in, and I'm in the middle of this. I was too self-conscious to actually dance, but it was the first time in a long time that I didn't feel like embarrassed to just exist. I felt a million miles away from Longfellow Middle School, where things happened like this guy Dustin who punched me in the face when I asked him what time we had soccer rehearsal. So 2 years later, I find out from a classmate of mine who also knew this director. She had worked with him at an after-school job, but he died of AIDS. And by the time I graduated high school, most of the guys in this production were dead. So cut to this year, I'm now an adult male married to my husband, Sean. I live in New York City. I work as a musician. And like a lot of musicians, I have a million small jobs. One of them is I'm a professional singer for a pro choir. It's a big Park Avenue church that has a hired choir. And the clergy, they asked all of the pro singers to submit a paragraph for a Lenten devotional booklet, which was, who would you consider a modern day saint? An example that you could live after. And immediately, I wanted to write about this director, but I don't remember his name. Social media wasn't a thing. And I called OU, I called the Performance Library to see if there was a record of this, and found out there actually is no record of this production ever happening at all. And I immediately understood it was just a student thing. These guys just put this on. My mom knew exactly what was going on. This was like a way for them to be visible, a way for them to sound an alarm, a way for them to connect with people who may or may not have been in the closet and may or may not have been able to talk about the nightmare that was happening, a way for them to leave a record. I think about them a lot as I get older. I think about this entire vast missing generation on whom I should still be leaning and with whom I should still be having random dance parties. I don't know their names. I wish I could know them now, especially the guys in this cast. The courage that it took for them to just be visible in that place at that time is astounding, and I directly benefit. I'm profoundly grateful for their example of the right way to be a human in the world. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the definition of a saint. Thank you.
Corey, thank you so much for sharing that story of those saints and the story of your mom, Ellen, too. Okay, we are coming to the end of our night together. But before I introduce our final storyteller, we have our last giveaway. And these are 2 tickets for the Mainstage event at Cain's on Wednesday, November 19th. So get out your tickets. And we have 245, 243. Yay, in the back. Wonderful. Congratulations. You can go over to Ethan, give him in your information, and I'll be in touch. If you didn't win, there are still tickets available. Just Google Moth Mainstage Tulsa. It'll come up. You can buy your tickets right on the Cain's website. So I have a few people to thank. Of course, our partner, The Moth. We're so grateful to be working with you. It is truly an honor, and we appreciate everything you've done to uplift Tulsa voices and storytellers. I want to thank our True Blue leads, Abby Hemphill and Benny Dang, who helped at check-in. Our amazing timekeeper, Braylon Goodnight. Yay. And technical assistance by Sally Gonzalo. Thank you so much. These are TCC theater students, and we're so grateful for their help tonight. And then finally, C4C staff member Ethan Rowland, who helped, and the man behind the curtain, David Van Dever. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you. If you like tonight, please come back. Everything we do at the Center for Creativity is free and open to the public. Our signature series, the I Can't workshops, begin again in January. We even provide supplies for those through all of our different partners, and it's just a great chance to get in touch with the creative process. So please come back to the Center for Creativity, take advantage of our programs. At TCC, we say you belong here, and we want to welcome you back into the building. So our final storyteller. She says, my favorite candy is Smarties, and as a kid on Halloween, I would trade my sister Twix for Smarties, and all the adults would say I was getting scammed. I have to say, the most controversial thing I ever posted on social media was when I said Smarties isn't technically a candy. People tore me apart. Give it up for the queen of Smarties, Rachel Ann Dennis.
Hello. I recently had a really terrible stomach bug at the beginning of September. The kind where if I had been a kid, I would have stumbled to the foot of my parents' bed while they slept and vomited on their floor to announce what was happening within my body. But I'm a grown-up, so I called out sick to work, and I got into bed, and I started to scroll through every single type of short form content that we have, all platforms. And I was hoping that it would be an escape from the war that was happening inside me. But we all know that on social media, there's also a war happening. The dystopian hellscape that is looming upon us, and then paired with, suggestions for really delicious waffle toppings. And then the debate if skinny jeans or wide leg jeans or middle parts, and sales for this and sales for that. And then all of a sudden you're seeing some really horrific news smattered in, oftentimes one video after another. And then someone has a reel where she says that it's the first day of the federal duck stamp competition and that it's live streaming. And I go, let's go. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna watch it. So I put it on the big TV and I start watching this live stream. And it's an incredible competition. There are over 200 entries, and the duck stamp competition is specifically created so that people will buy the duck stamp, and it acts as the hunting license for duck hunters. And duck hunters, wetland conservationists, and artists create these duck stamps, and they're really beautiful, and the money from the duck stamps goes towards wetland conservation, preserving species. I could go on. It's a special interest of mine now. I've learned a lot about ducks since September, and that's not really the whole story, so we've got to move on. But if you want to talk to me afterwards, I can tell you even more. So I'm watching the competition, and they're ruthless. They're yesing and knowing these ducks. I have such a good time that I call out sick a second day to watch the second half of this competition because I got to see who wins. Third place happens to be someone from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I was thrilled. I also got a little emotional because I realized that these artists and the wetland conservationists and the hunters are all really different people. And they all were together for this shared goal where they're enjoying these duck paintings. And I'm gonna cry now. Like, it was really sweet. Like, that they all came together and they have really, all I can say is, Judy, the wetland conservationist judge, was really, really different than the duck hunter specialist on that panel. But they came together for the shared goal, and it was cool. And it got me thinking about how that doesn't always happen these days. The duck stamp competition is in the back of my mind, and I go on this vacation with my siblings, and on my flight home, I am sitting on the plane, and it's not a fully sold out plane, and there's no one sitting next to me. And I'm like really excited. And then at the last minute, this gentleman sits next to me and he's got a red hat on. The red hat, the Make America Great Again hat. And I'm stressed out because I haven't packed very well, so I'm stuck with this giant yellow water bottle that I have that didn't fit in my bag that I have to hold, and the bumper sticker on it says anti-fascist little freak in big green goopy letters. And it's just like, so I'm just sitting there with my yellow water bottle, he's got his red hat, and we like know each other in that moment. If he didn't know that I was a queer, food allergy laden librarian, the water bottle gave him a tip. So we're sitting next to each other, and I've got my headphones and my phone, and we're about to take off, and he's raw dogging this flight. He doesn't have a phone, he doesn't have headphones, nothing. It's just him and his thoughts just sitting next to me. And also, if you don't know what raw dogging means, do not use it until you look it up. It's not for work. Anyways, so he's sitting there. He's sitting there next to me, and we're getting to take off, and then we finally reach altitude, and he lowers his tray table, and he takes out doll clothes and starts sewing the doll clothes. And he's got this little skirt and this little sweatshirt and this little thing. It looks like it's from a kit, but he's doing it, and I could have ignored him, which is good plane etiquette. We're really, you're making eye contact, but it's like side eye where you're like, that person's eating a whole lemon, unpeeled, weird. I'm not gonna say anything. But I thought about the duck stamp competition. And I work with kids, I'm a children's librarian, and I work with my hands, I'm an artist. And so, I put the AirPods in the case and I look at him and I'm like, what are you working on? And he starts talking about his granddaughter and how he's like trying to like make things, and we like have this conversation that goes really nice, and all of a sudden I'm making something and we're making it together, and it feels really special. And there was another sticker on my bottle that says, "Another world is possible." And maybe that's the one that he saw. And maybe there is a world where we can figure this out. And the queer allergy food librarian can exist and keep her job, and we can have a good time. But that's my story. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel Ann. That is a perfect story to end the evening, because ducks bring people together, but stories bring people together. And that's why we do this work, because nothing brings people together and builds empathy and connects communities like telling and sharing true personal stories. Thank you to all the storytellers who poured their hearts out tonight. Thank you to all of you for being here. Let's get the storytellers up on stage for one final bow.